This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
GSMC Sports Podcast. This episode is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jesse Tapia, and for today's show, as usually every Friday show, every show for Friday is usually, and we're going to be really NFL heavy today. We're going to be talking about the Thursday night football game to start off. Then I'll be making my Week 15 picks. We'll talk about the NBA games from Thursday night to split it up. Probably make my picks for tonight too, and then we'll talk about Sunday night football between the Dallas Cowboys and Oakland Raiders also. So, like I said, it's going to be a really NFL heavy show, but. All right, how about yesterday's NFL Thursday night game? We had the Denver Broncos heading into Indianapolis. We had Denver winning 25-13. Let's see, Brock Osweiler, he ended up coming in for Trevor Siemian in this one. Trevor Siemian came out of the game. I think he has a dislocated shoulder or a dislocated hand. I can't remember. I think it was a shoulder. I'm pretty positive he left the game. Yeah, dislocated shoulder, I think. In the game before he went out, he was 5 of 9 throwing the ball, 67 yards, did throw an interception. And then Brock Osweiler comes in for him. Looks like a totally different quarterback than we've all known to come and love. I mean, look nothing like the guy we saw in Houston or Cleveland for, I guess, he didn't even play in Cleveland. I forgot. He just played the little preseason games. But, yeah, just looked a whole lot better than he's probably been his whole entire NFL career. He completed 12 out of his 17 attempts, had 194 yards, 2 touchdowns. C.J. Anderson running the ball, had a good game, 30 carries, 158 yards, no touchdowns, though. Devontae Booker had 11 carries for 39 yards. Demaryius Thomas had a decent game, I guess you could say. 5 receptions for 69 yards. Emmanuel Sanders, 7 receptions for 68 yards. Cody Latimer had 3 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown. And this pretty much, I was talking about it yesterday on the Fantasy Football Podcast, talking about whether or not you should start players from this game. And pretty much I had to say that you should probably stay away from every Denver player, like C.J. Anderson. I thought Demaryius Thomas was probably the only one you'd be able to play and do well. I said sit Emmanuel Sanders. I said, yeah, like I said, sit Devontae Booker if you needed a running back and all that. But look at that. Trevor Siemian comes about. Brock Osweiler comes in, and boom, all of a sudden this team's playing like they do got talent on here. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about them going forward and talk a little bit about Brock Osweiler a little bit more too. But let's get into the cold stats real quick. We had Jacoby Brissett, who completed 17 out of his 30 passes, 158 yards, didn't throw for any touchdowns or interceptions. Did rush for a touchdown, though. He took off with the ball 5 times, had 18 yards. Frank Gore had 10 carries for 31 yards. Jack Doyle had led the Colts receivers with 7 receptions for 47 yards, no touchdowns. T.Y. Hilton had 5 receptions for 41 yards, and Frank Gore had 3 catches for 37 yards. Let's get into the scoring summary real quick, and then we'll talk a little bit about both teams going forward. All right, so first quarter comes. You had Jacoby Brissett with his 7-yard touchdown run, which made it 7-0 Indianapolis. Then Adam Vinatieri comes in, kicks a 3-yard or 45-yard field goal, which makes it 10-0. Brock Osweiler takes off with the ball and scores from an 18-yard run, which makes it 10-7. This run, too, Brock Osweiler didn't look quick at all, but, I mean, he found open space and found a way to get into the end zone, so that was a little fun play right there. But third quarter comes. Vinatieri kicks another field goal, which makes it 13-7. And then Cody Latimer catches a 22-yard touchdown pass from Brock Osweiler, which makes it 14-13 Denver. And then Jeff Herman catches a 54-yard touchdown pass from Brock Osweiler, makes it 22-13, and then Brandon McManus kicks another field goal in the fourth, which makes it 25-13, and then the game ends right there. But yeah, it was just I thought going into this game it'd be real low scoring. Didn't think either team was going to play well, and I know that early on this year, pretty much throughout the season, I've been talking about Denver's quarterbacks. So, like, first off, Trevor Siemian, I never really thought he was a good quarterback. And, like, with how he played this season, I mean, the guy throws more interceptions than he does touchdowns. It really can't. Like, Trevor Siemian's one of his biggest problems is that I think he tries to force it in too much. And he really tries to do too much with nothing that's there, you know? Like, if the play's not there, then he'll try, like I said, just pretty much try and fit it into a receiver rather than throwing it away. He just really doesn't throw to open receivers, doesn't lead receivers, just pretty much just doesn't do the basics of what you need a quarterback to do as far as like playing well. And then you got Brock Osweiler, who before yesterday really hasn't played well at all in his NFL career. He played all like decently in Denver, I guess, for that year. Peyton Manning got benched, but I mean, Brock Osweiler comes in and then gets benched for Manning again. Eventually, obviously, that Denver team went on to win the Super Bowl, but I mean, after that, that's when Brock Osweiler goes to get his big old contract in Houston. And he only lasted a year there. It didn't really work out too well for them, obviously. And then boom, goes to Cleveland, and Cleveland cuts him right before the season starts. So, I mean, now we've come full circle, and he wasn't even playing well when he had the chance to start for the Broncos so far this season, when I think it was Simeon who got hurt for a couple of weeks. And, so he just really wasn't playing well. But we'll talk a little bit more about his stats from yesterday's game. And then you got Paxton Lynch, who the Broncos spent a first-round pick, I think, was it 2 years ago or I think it was last year maybe, that they might have spent the first on him. But he really hasn't been able to stay healthy, and even when he's out there, I mean, he really hasn't looked too good. So right now, Denver's, like I said, they're going to need a bunch of quarterbacks in the draft. They need to draft at least, I'd go probably one in the first round and then one in the later rounds, just so you have two quarterbacks that you can develop. Because I feel like we all know what Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch, and Brock Osweiler are, okay? Brock Osweiler could be a good backup quarterback, as he showed yesterday with his 2 touchdowns, but he's simply just not the guy who's going to pretty much lead your team and get you wins, because obviously we've seen it pretty much with 3 different teams. I mean, the Broncos let him go off to Houston for that contract. Houston didn't like him, and then Cleveland didn't even think that he'd be able to fit on their roster, so they cut him, and like I said, now he's back in Dallas, so he might have a career as a backup, but really as a starter, I think he's done. Trevor Siemian, same thing with him. I mean, he could be a solid backup somewhere, but that's just about it. And as far as Paxton Lynch goes, I mean, the guy's still young, but I think his time in Denver is going to be over soon. I don't think he's really going to be getting much of a chance unless the Broncos get rid of... Because obviously the Broncos, they're going to have to get rid of a quarterback this offseason, I feel, because they have 3 quarterbacks on the roster, right? Then you're drafting one in the first round. So obviously you're going to need to cut someone. And I think it's going to be Simeon, who's the odd man out. I think for some reason John Elway likes Osweiler. And then, like I said yesterday, he was just playing well. But yeah, I think maybe it's more Osweiler playing for his job these last 3 games, because Simeon's going to be out for the rest of the season. So if you got Brock Osweiler starting these last 3 games and he's able to show something, maybe Elway thinks, you know what, I'll bring you on as a backup next year again. Because I think Osweiler's only on a 1-year deal with the Broncos for this season. It's pretty much like a show us what you can do again deal. But if the Broncos draft Josh Allen, I mean, I'm not really sure. Like for next season, I'm not really sure what the Broncos are going to do at quarterback. Okay, I know they're going to draft a quarterback top 10 with their first pick. They have to. I mean, if they didn't draft a quarterback with their first number 1 pick, then that'd be pretty crazy, honestly, because like we all know that this team needs quarterbacks. So I mean, I'm expecting them to go Josh Allen, but whether it's Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen or even Lamar Jackson or whoever it may be, I mean, I'm curious to see what Denver's going to do next season to start off the season. I mean, when you bring him in, I don't think Elway's really going to bring him in and be like, oh yeah, you're the automatic starter. He's probably going to have a guy like Paxton Lynch or maybe Brock Osweiler go in and start the season and pretty much try and let the rookie QB develop for as much time as he can until pretty much Osweiler or Lynch gives up the job. Because if you notice too, when for some reason it's like a trend, it's like it's not like factual or anything like that, but it's just something I feel like I've seen over the years. Like when teams draft a quarterback in the top 10 or even in the first round, whoever they have starting for them, like it's pretty much like say like go back to Cleveland and stuff, right? Johnny Manziel a couple years back gets drafted in the 21st pick, I think it was. Josh McCown comes out to be the starter that year in the beginning of the season, and it's like Josh McCown isn't a bad quarterback by any means or anything like that. He's been a pretty decent quarterback over his NFL career. That's why he's had such a long NFL career. So yeah, you have Josh McCown going in that year. And then to start, and then it's like pretty much in the back of your head, Johnny Manziel is eventually going to be the starter. It's just somehow with these quarterbacks get drafted in the first round, whoever's starting the season, if it's like whoever it's usually more of like a journeyman type of player, like backup quarterback type of player that's going to be starting when teams draft their first round pick for the at quarterback. And it's almost like whoever's starting, they're not going to last. It's always going to be somehow the starting quarterback coming in, whether it's through injury or whether it's through benching. Just somehow, it never works out to where, the backup journeyman quarterback just really does well in the beginning of the season in order to keep his job. But yeah, it was just something I always noticed. But yeah, just going back to the Broncos, I mean, if I'm them, I'm probably getting rid of, like I said, I'm sure they're going to keep Lynch, so it's probably going to be Simeon or Osweiler, but I'm not really sure who you keep there. I mean, who really is the better quarterback between those two? I mean, yeah, we had Brock Osweiler come out, and let me see his stats again. I think it was 172 yards. I think it was 194 yards, 2 touchdowns. So you have him come in, right? But I mean, and throw for 2 touchdowns. But I mean, this is against the Indianapolis Colts defense, all right? Indianapolis' defense really isn't something to write home about or anything like that. They really haven't played well at all so far this season. So I mean, let me see who Denver's got going forward, actually, so we could see. All right, so you got the Redskins and then the Chiefs for the rest of the season. They're playing in Washington, and then they're going to be playing back in Denver. Washington's defense is a whole lot better than the Chiefs' defense, I feel, because the Chiefs' secondary really hasn't been playing like how we've all expected them to play. I know that they brought in Darrelle Revis in the like halfway through the season, maybe a couple weeks after, but I mean, he really hasn't worked out too well. I don't even think he's getting too much playing time out there, so that's not really working out. But I mean, Denver, like Brock Osweiler, like I said, these are just his last 2 weeks to pretty much go out and prove, you know what, I deserve a spot on this team, because if not, then I'd say just go with Simeon. And Simeon, like I said, he's not a starting quarterback or anything like that, but I think he could be a decent backup quarterback, like pretty much a fill-in whenever you get a guy get hurt and you need Simeon to come in for a couple of weeks or just pretty much stop the bleeding in a bad game. I mean, I'm sure he can come in and do that, but I mean, like I said, just I'm not really expecting him or wanting him to lead my team going forward, but we'll see what Denver has to do. And as far as Indianapolis, I mean, obviously that they need a quarterback really bad too, and that quarterback is most likely Andrew Luck, but we're not sure how he's going to come back once his shoulder's all healed up, and if it ever heals up, you know, because he did try to come back this season, and he came out, made some throws in practice, and then after that he said how his shoulder was still hurting, so they threw him back on IR. But I mean, you bring back Andrew Luck, and let's say that he comes back and he plays well, but he's not like the same type of quarterback that he once was, because I'll tell you this, shoulder injuries for quarterbacks, especially on their throwing arm, I feel that if when I was talking about Jameis Winston a few weeks ago when he was shut down for a little bit, I thought that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should have shut him down a whole lot longer rather than just a couple of weeks that he was out, because like I said, as far as shoulder injuries and quarterbacks go, you don't want to end up with this whole Andrew Luck situation to where you try and rush him back and boom, he just re-injures it and it's just constant pain and constantly injured, you know? That's obviously never a way to run your team, and especially with the players that they got around him, because like I said, even if you do bring Andrew Luck back, I mean, he really doesn't have too much around him that pretty much he could succeed with. Like Frank Gore is on the tail end of his career. I know Marlon Mack, the backup running back, has pretty much shown flashes, but I mean, that's one thing that Indianapolis has seemed to, it's a bad habit they seem to fall into, sort of like Green Bay. They'll go with the hot hand rather than just addressing the position in the draft, and when they try to address the position in the draft, I mean, they really don't do a good enough job of scouting the position, pretty much getting the right guy, because Green Bay, I mean, I couldn't tell you their last like solid running back. I think it'd be like more like Ahmad Green, I think his name was. Like that's the last solid, like Eddie Lacy, Eddie Lacy, I guess, for those couple of years with Green Bay. But I mean, he only worked out for a year or two, and then he had that weight issue and pretty much hasn't gone back to how he used to play. So I mean, Green Bay really hasn't had a top running back, and they've pretty much been going pretty much by whoever's got the hot hand. I mean, Ty Montgomery is supposed to be the starter this season, then he gets hurt, and then Aaron Jones comes in, he plays well, he gets hurt, and then you got Jamal Williams who finally gets the ball, and then he's been playing well, and pretty much they haven't gone back to Montgomery or Jones because Jamal Williams has been playing so well. And then I guess you could say it's the same thing with the Colts. I mean, they've had Frank Gore for these last couple of years, so I mean, that's pretty much been their starting tailback, but I feel like they haven't done enough to pretty much solidify the position. I mean, draft a running back to pretty much just go by committee with Frank Gore and draft a running back early on in the draft. I mean, I'm sure they're going to have to go we're going to have to go defense first in this draft, the Colts, mainly because that defense really, honestly, I don't even know what the Colts are going to do. I'm not just trying just to say things right now, but the Colts really, I mean, if you think about it, ever since Andrew Luck came in, they really haven't done anything to put any talent around him. I mean, besides T.Y. Hilton, but I can't remember if he was there already or he was getting there. But yeah, they really haven't done much to surround Andrew Luck with talent or anything like that. I mean, like I said, Frank Gore's probably been his best running back, and he really hasn't even played with Frank Gore much because Andrew Luck's been hurt for most of the time. And then, like I said, T.Y. Hilton's their best receiver, but Dante Moncrief is your number 2. And do you really want Dante Moncrief as your number 2? Jack Doyle's been a solid tight end so far this season, and it's looking like he's going to have a spot on that team going forward. But, I mean, that defense, too, if you have a poor defense, then you really have no shot at winning. So, I mean, they really need to fix the defense also. But I'm not really sure if they're going to start off with the defense or go offensive line or pick a skilled position player like running back or wide receiver. Because, I mean, they have needs at pretty much every position except for tight end, their number one receiver spot. I think their offensive line is okay. They need a running back, and they need an entire defense, too. So, I mean, Indianapolis is really going to have to figure it out, and hopefully whoever the GM may be right now, hopefully he's got a plan in place because, I mean, when Andrew Luck comes back next year, if he does, I mean, you're going to want to be ready and competing because obviously you can't stand all these losing seasons back to back to back. So the Colts are really going to need to figure it out, but that's all I got to say about these two teams right here. Like I said, I mean, watch out for the Broncos to draft a quarterback, and I'm sure Trevor Siemian or Brock Osweiler is going to be the odd man out. I mean, you can't really let go of Paxton Lynch yet because you drafted him in the first round last year, I think it was. So I feel like they still got to keep him on the roster pretty much just to show that they haven't given up on him completely. And now that I think about it, I mean, Paxton Lynch might be that starting quarterback that fills in for the rookie that they draft in the top 10 next year for those first couple of games. So we'll see how it all ends up. But yeah, the Colts also, like I said, they just need to start drafting better. I mean, pretty much build a team around Andrew Luck so you can succeed. And pretty much when Andrew Luck does go down, whenever it may be, I mean, whether his shoulder gets aggravated again or whatnot, I mean, you still have you could throw in a guy like Jacoby Brissett and you can still win a couple of games. But we'll see what these teams want to do. So far, it hasn't really worked out for them, but time will tell. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Next up, we're going to do our Week 15 picks. And then after that, we'll talk about the NBA games from Thursday night, and we'll talk about Sunday Night Football to finish off the show. But stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
To the GSMC Sports Podcast. If you missed that last segment or need a quick reminder, as I like to say, we basically just talked about the Thursday night football game between the Denver Broncos and Indianapolis Colts. Denver won that game 25-13. And Brock Osweiler had to come off the bench and pretty much go out there and play well, as he did for the Broncos, because Trevor Siemian came out of the game and dislocated his shoulder, I believe. And he's going to be out for the rest of the season too. And I was talking about how in the last segment about how Denver's going to end up drafting a quarterback with their first pick in the top 10. So obviously they're going to have to get rid of one, and I think it's going to be either Trevor Siemian or Brock Osweiler. So these next two games that Osweiler has to start, which I most likely think he will be the starter, he's going to have to show that he belongs on this team, because if not, I think they'll just go ahead and keep Siemian, because pretty much Brock Osweiler, I mean, if he didn't play well, he would be the odd man out to me, because Denver just brought him back on a one-year deal to see what he could do. So he's really going to need to go out and show him that he could still be a productive backup quarterback, I feel, and show John Elway that he deserves to be on this team. But we'll see. Only time will tell. And as far as the Colts go, I mean, they really need to start building up the whole, pretty much the entire team. They have solid players at a couple of positions, like T.Y. Hilton at receiver and Jack Doyle at tight end. But other than that, I mean, you drafted Malik Hooker to play safety or cornerback. I can't remember which one it was, but he gets hurt, so you still got to worry about that position because you're not sure if he's going to come back and play well. Because I think he did tear his ACL in the beginning of the year. But, I mean, they still got to worry about their linebackers, their D-line, the rest of their secondary. I'm not too sure how the offensive line is over there. And then you got to worry about that number 2 receiver spot, and then you're going to need a new running back going forward because, I mean, Frank Gore, he's good and all, but, I mean, he's on the tail end of his career. So they pretty much just got to – unless Andrew Luck comes back and he's the same old Andrew Luck, I mean, given the shoulder injuries that he's had, then, I mean, Indianapolis might be fine, but either way, I still feel that they should go and build around the team, because when you pretty much your star quarterback comes out and you have a guy like Jacoby Brissett come in, and Jacoby Brissett isn't a bad quarterback, okay? He's a whole lot better than what Denver's got, and he's a whole lot better than what most other teams got. But, I mean, you really can't do too much when you don't have talent around you. I mean, there's only a few quarterbacks in this league who can truly make the people around them better. Obviously, Jacoby Brissett isn't that, so the Colts really need to start building up a solid, talented team, because they haven't really in a while, since they've been pretty much getting saved by Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck this whole time. But let's get into our Week 15 picks right here. So on Saturday, we got some football games. We got the Bears heading into Detroit. Detroit's currently favored in this one by 5, as they should be, and I think I'm going to go with Detroit in this one. Last week, the Bears played well against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bears won that one 33-7. And I think Detroit beat the Bucs 24-21, I think it was. So, I mean, both of these teams are playing well right now. I know the Bears are 4-9, but they've been playing some pretty good football the last couple of weeks. Mitch Trubisky's looking like he's starting to come along, starting to play a whole lot better than what he was. I'm not sure if they're going to bring back John Fox at the end of the season. And then you got a guy like Jordan Howard at the running back position, who's been playing extremely well. Pretty much, I mean, I'm going to go with the Lions in this one, but I think this game is going to be closer than most think. I think Matt Stafford is probably going to go for a few, probably around 2 to 3 touchdowns, at least 100 yards in this one. But, I mean, I could be wrong about that, too, because Chicago does have a solid defense. I mean, that's a quick, young defense also, and I really enjoy watching their defense just because of how they play and all that. But, yeah, I think I'm going to go with Detroit in this one. I mean, but, looking forward and stuff, now that we're at the end of the season, I wonder who, if Chicago does fire John Fox, who they'll bring in to coach Trubisky. Maybe they'll go the Rams way, or pretty much go the same route they did and hire a young coach for their quarterback to pretty much groom him in and stuff like that. But we'll see how it all ends up. And as for the Lions, I mean, they got to win out for the rest of the season. They got to win these next 3 games, or else they really have no shot at making playoffs. So we'll see if they're able to do it. I think Detroit's got the Bears. They got, I forget who they're playing next week, but they got the Packers at the end of the season too. So they really need to pretty much just nothing to lose here. They really got to play well. And the second game we got on Saturday is the Los Angeles Chargers heading into Kansas City, facing off with the Chiefs. That one's going to be at 5:25 on Saturday. The Chargers are favored in this one, and I think I'm going to go with the Chargers for this one. Right now, Phillip Rivers is playing good football at the quarterback position. You got Melvin Gordon, who's been playing well so far this season. And Keenan Allen and Tyrell Williams have also been playing well at the wide receiver position. You had Tyrell Williams, who was starting off slow in the beginning of the year and pretty much didn't start heating up until a couple of weeks ago, but he's found his footing in this season. Like I said, Keenan Allen, he's been able to stay healthy so far this season, so he's been playing well. The thing with Keenan Allen, I mean, it's never really been about his ability. It's just been about his ability to stay on the field, I guess, if that makes any sense. Yeah, so he really hasn't been able to stay on the field, so really haven't been able to pretty much enjoy watching him play. But so far this season, like I said, he hasn't been hurt, so he's been playing extremely well. And then you got Hunter Henry ready to take over, or pretty much, I guess you could say, has taken over from Antonio Gates at that tight end position. You still got Gates on the team, but obviously Hunter Henry's going to be getting the ball a whole lot more than Gates does. It's more, I guess the Chargers could just be waiting for Gates to retire, because I feel like they're not just going to cut him or let him go. They're going to let him retire on his terms, because that guy did so much for that franchise. And then you finally got the defense, who's been playing well. I always want to call them San Diego Chargers, but Los Angeles the last few years really hasn't had the greatest of defenses, but it's pretty much come fully shaped. So now they're starting to play a whole lot better. The secondary's been playing well. Then you got Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram leading the D-line, and Denzel Perryman leading the linebackers too. So yeah, so far so good this year for the Chargers defense, and that's pretty much why I think they've been able to go on this hot streak. They don't really give up too many points, and like I said, Phillip Rivers has been playing well at quarterback. So I mean, if you're scoring at least 20 points and you got a solid defense, that's a good recipe for winning. And I think that's what's going to happen against the Chiefs this week. I remember a couple weeks ago, Alex Smith had that 399-yard, 4-touchdown game for the Chiefs. But, I mean, last week he comes out and throws for around 230 yards, I think it was. No touchdowns and 1 interception. I think he's going to have one of those games this week also. I think the biggest thing for the Chargers is just to limit Kareem Hunt and have Alex Smith try to beat you, because Alex Smith really hasn't been playing well these last couple of weeks, or pretty much the last month and a half, I guess, except for that one game where he did throw for 4 touchdowns. But the Chiefs did end up losing that game to the Jets, 38-31. So I feel like the biggest thing that the Chargers got to do is, like I said, just limit Kareem Hunt and force Alex Smith to beat you. And if they do that, then I think that they'll be fine and pull out the win and come out on top in that division. First game for Sunday, we got the Miami Dolphins heading into Buffalo. Buffalo's currently favored by 3.5 in this game. Not sure how the weather's going to be for this game, and it looks like Tyrod Taylor is going to be starting on Sunday. But I'm going to go with the Miami Dolphins in this one, mainly because their secondary last week against the Patriots played extremely well, and obviously I think that the Patriots have better receivers. And pretty much, like I said, just a better overall receiving core than the Bills, and pretty much as far as the Bills goes, their receivers and tight ends. So I think that the Dolphins are going to be able to shut them down, which is going to make Tyrod Taylor pretty much he's going to have to pretty much take off and do it on his legs. But I think Miami's going to do a good job to contain him, and I think LaShawn McCoy, he's going to be able to get his because he's going to be getting the ball a whole bunch. But I think if Miami tries to at least limit him, then they'll be fine. Jay Cutler, these last few games, has been playing well. Kenyon Drake, ever since J.J. left, has been playing extremely well. Jarvis Landry's playing pretty much like a man who needs a new contract, which he does, and it's looking like Miami will extend him eventually. So we'll see about that. But I just think that the Dolphins right now are playing the better football at the moment, even though the Bills got the better record by a game. So we'll see how this one ends up. It's going to be a low-scoring game, I feel, because it could end up being a snowy game again. So we'll see how it all ends up. Miami really hasn't really played in the snow for a while. I mean, the last game I can remember that they played in the snow was against Pittsburgh a couple years back, where Antonio Brown almost took that whole lateral play back for a touchdown, but stepped out of bounds. So we'll see how it is, but I got Miami in that one. As for Cincinnati, they're heading into Minnesota, and then Minnesota's favored by 10.5 in this game, and I got Minnesota big time in this one. I don't think Cincinnati really poses much of a threat for Minnesota. Last week, Minnesota's defense didn't play too well against Carolina, and I think this week they're going to come out and pretty much play a whole lot harder than they did last week, especially at home. I think Andy Dalton's going to throw at least a couple of interceptions. The Bengals have one of the worst offensive lines in football, so I feel that the Vikings aren't going to have too much trouble getting to the quarterback. We'll see what A.J. Green can do against Xavier Rhodes, and I think Case Keenum is going to play well against this Bengals defense also. Last week, Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray didn't have good games either, so I think they're going to come out and pretty much play a whole lot better than they did last week. This is pretty much a pick-me-up game right here for the Vikings. Last week didn't play too well, but this week they're going to go out and beat up on the Bengals and come out with a big win here. As for the next game, one of the more interesting games of the weekend, we got the Green Bay Packers heading into Carolina, facing off with the Panthers. The Panthers are favored in this one, as they should be, even with Aaron Rodgers coming back. So yeah, that's what makes this game interesting, all right? The Packers basically need to win out in order to have a chance at making playoffs. And I've been talking about how I want them to do that, how I want them to make playoffs, because I feel if they do make playoffs, then that's a Super Bowl contender right there. But I'm not too sure they're going to be able to win out. They got the Panthers, then the Vikings, and then the Lions. They can beat the Lions, but I'm not too sure if they could beat the Panthers and the Vikings, all right? It's Aaron Rodgers' first week back. He's obviously going to be a little bit rusty. And right now, Carolina's playing good football, and they're 9-4 right now. And if Carolina wins, they basically guarantee their spot into the playoffs. I mean, obviously not officially, but I think if Carolina was to pull this one out, because who do they got going forward? Let me check real quick. Here we go. All right, yeah. So Carolina, they got the Packers, the Bucks, and then the Falcons. I think that this is going to be their toughest game. I think they could beat the Bucks easily, and I think they could beat the Falcons, because mainly I don't see the Falcons really making playoffs. And yeah, as far as the Packers game goes, I mean, you're really just going to have to pretty much wait and see which Aaron Rodgers is showing up. I think either way, though, Carolina's got a solid defense. The linebackers are going to take Williams out of... actually, I'm not too sure. I was talking like I was going to pick the Panthers, but... I mean, with Rodgers back, I'm expecting him to come back, and pretty much, it might be a little unfair of me to think that he's going to come back and pretty much be the old Aaron Rodgers, because like I said, he's going to be coming back. He might have some rest as far as throwing the ball, but I mean, I guess I got to go with my gut here. I was actually going to go Panthers, but now I'm going to go with the Packers. I trust Aaron Rodgers way too much, and I feel that Cam Newton's not going to be able to do much on offense, too much on offense to put up points on the board. I mean, like I said, he's a very inaccurate quarterback, so I don't think he's really going to be able to complete the big throws that he needs to make. So I'm actually going to go Panthers in this one. I think Devontae Adams and maybe Jordy Nelson are going to have big games in this one. But next game, we got the Baltimore Ravens heading into Cleveland, facing off with the Browns. Last 2 weeks, I picked the Browns, picked them once against the Chargers, and picked them once against the Packers. Didn't work out well for me, and I think, honestly, that the Browns are going to go winless for the rest of the season. They're going to go 0-16, so obviously that means they got the Ravens in this one. Really no reason to pick the Browns in this one. I think Josh Gordon might come back down to earth in this game. I think the Ravens' defensive line is going to cause some trouble for DeShone Kizer, so it's going to force him to make a couple of mistakes. So, yeah, I got the Ravens in that one. Next game up, we got Houston heading into Jacksonville. We got Jacksonville in this one big time. Don't think Houston's going to be able to do too much. DeAndre Hopkins is going to get shut down by Jalen Ramsey, and that entire Jacksonville defense is pretty much going to take Houston's offense out of the game. You'll probably see TJ Yates throw a couple interceptions. I don't think Lamar Miller's going to be able to run the ball well, and like I said, DeAndre Hopkins isn't going to be able to do too much. So obviously, if your offense isn't playing well, then you're going to lose. So that's why I got the Jaguars in this one. Next up, we got the New York Jets heading into New Orleans, facing off with the Saints. It's another one of these little. I might be able to go 100% in these picks right here because there's really no tough picks, I don't think. So then you got the Saints, besides the Green Bay Packers and Panthers game, and also the Miami Dolphins, Buffalo Bills game. That's going to be a tough one because it's pretty much Miami really doesn't play in the cold too much, so we'll see how they react. But yeah, going back to this Jets and Saints game, I mean, Josh McCown's out for the season. Bryce Petty's going to be the starter, I believe. So that's pretty much all I got to say about this game right now. The Saints are playing for playoffs, and they're playing like a team who's going to want to make it out to the Super Bowl. You got Alvin Kamara coming back from his concussion from last week. Drew Brees is going to play well. Mark Ingram's been running the ball well. I think Michael Thomas is going to have a big game, and that Saints defense is going to feast on that offense for the Jets. So I got the Saints in this one probably by at least 15, I feel. Next game, we got the Eagles heading into New York, facing off with the Giants. Nick Foles' first start of the season, and you know what? I got the Eagles in this one. I think the Giants are just bad enough to where Nick Foles is going to have a decent game, and this is a good first game for Nick Foles to start. Right, it's not against a great team or anything like that. It's against the sorry Giants, so it's going to allow him to pretty much get in the rhythm of things and pretty much play well. So I got the Eagles in this one. I think their defense too is going to play extremely well. Next up, you got the Arizona Cardinals heading into Washington, facing off with the Redskins. I think I'm going to go with the Redskins in this one. Kirk Cousins is going to be able to pull it out. It's going to worsen their draft pick, but nonetheless, you're coming out here to win games. So I don't think Blaine Gabbert and Kerwin Williams are going to be able to get it done. Larry Fitzgerald's kind of tailed off for the last couple of weeks, and I think just pretty much Kirk Cousins needs a win here, so he's going to be able to get it against the Cardinals. So I got the Cardinals winning that one. Then you got one of the games of the weekend. You got the Rams heading into Seattle, facing off with the Seahawks. And this is going to tell us a lot about who the Rams are. And I kind of want to go with him, but I think I'm going to go Seattle in this one. All right, yeah, I'm going to go with Seattle. And I think if the Falcons win this week too, they played Monday night against the Bucs. But if the Falcons win and the Rams lose, and I think the Falcons keep that 6th spot and the Rams fall out of the top 6, so the Rams really need this win. But I'm not picking against Seattle in December in Seattle also, so I'm going to go with them. I think Russell Wilson's going to bounce back from a tough game. He did throw 3 touchdowns last week, but also had 3 interceptions. And I just don't think that this Rams team is ready to really compete and win these big games yet. They're a really young team. As for this next game with the Tennessee Titans heading into San Francisco, facing off with the 49ers. I got the 49ers in this one. Right now, the Titans aren't playing good football. The 49ers are playing well with Jimmy G as their starting quarterback, and I think they're going to keep that momentum rolling, especially at home. I think you're going to see a whole lot more fans out there than you usually have. They really got something to cheer about now, so I think the 49ers are going to be able to beat the Titans. Right now, Marcus Mariota hasn't been playing well. He's been throwing more interceptions and touchdowns the last few weeks. So, I mean, Tennessee really needs this game, because if they lose this week, then they got the Rams and then the Jaguars, and they might just lose out for the rest of the season and finish 8-8. As for the last game I'm going to talk about, we get the New England Patriots heading into Pittsburgh, facing off with the Steelers. This is going to be the game of the week right here. And I know I said that about a couple other games, but this is actually going to be the game of the week. All right, you got the Patriots are coming off a bad loss to Miami. The Steelers are coming off of a big win against the Baltimore Ravens. It was a close game, but nonetheless, winning an AFC North rivalry game against the Ravens, as you are the Steelers, is a big accomplishment for them right there. And I think I'm going to go with Pittsburgh in this one. Right now, they're playing the better football, and I'm not sure how the Patriots are going to deal with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. Gronk is going to be coming back this week, so I mean that's going to be some added firepower for the Patriots. But I just think the Steelers' offense is going to be way too much for the Patriots' defense. So we'll see how it all ends up. But that's actually going to wrap it up for this segment. We'll talk about the Monday night and Sunday night games in the last segment. Next up, we're going to talk some NBA games from Thursday. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
GSMC Sports Podcast. In that last segment, we talked about, we made my Week 15 picks. Let me see if I can go over them real quick. Just give a little quick overview real quick. But yeah, I know for one of the, let's see right here, I got it pulled up. Here we go. All right, yeah. So I got the Detroit Lions beating the Bears. I got the Chargers beating the Chiefs. The Dolphins beating the Bills. I got the Vikings beating the Bengals. The Packers beating the Panthers. And I got the Ravens beating the Browns, the Jags beating the Texans, the Saints beating the Jets. I got the Eagles beating the Giants. Nick Foles is going to pick up a big win right here. Then I got the Redskins beating the Cardinals. I got the Seahawks beating the Rams, which should put the Seahawks, I believe, in first place in the NFC West. Then I got the 49ers beating the Titans. I got the Steelers beating the Patriots. And then the next segment, we're going to talk about Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. But for this one, like I said, we're going to be talking some NBA. Actually finally got all of my picks right for the NBA this time. Pretty much, I think the first time that's happened since I've been doing this show, there's been times where I got all of them except for one right. And I've gotten all of them except for a couple right. But this is actually the first time where I've gotten them all right. I mean, it was only 5 games I had to pick. So, I mean, not really too many difficult ones. But nonetheless, finally went 100%. But for this first game, we got Detroit. They headed into Atlanta. Detroit finally broke that 7-game losing streak they were on. Detroit won 105-91. Tobias Harris had 19 points, 4 rebounds, shot 8 of 11. Andre Drummond had 12 points, 19 rebounds. He shot 4 of 11 in that game. And Avery Bradley had 18 points, 3 assists, shot 7 of 15, and 2 of 2 from the three-point line. As for the Hawks, not a good game from their starting 5. I mean, you had Ilyasova with 23 points, 3 rebounds. He shot 10 of 14. But as for the rest of the starting 5, I mean, you really had no production. Miles Plumlee had 0 points in that one, played 23 minutes. Then you had Dennis Schroeder with only 9 points, 10 assists. He played 28 minutes, only shot 3 of 7. And then you had Ken Bazemore, who played 23 minutes, only 8 points, 4 assists, and 5 rebounds. As for Detroit, though, I mean, this is really a big win for them right here. They really needed it going on that 7-game losing streak. I know really put the team down. And I think right now they should be on the outside looking in, or actually no, I think they might be the 7th seed right now in the East right now. I think so. Let me check right here. They are currently, like I said, the 7th seed in the East. They're 8 games back of first. Obviously, that they're done with that whole being in the top 4 thing. I think because, I mean, well, actually, they're not too far out for the top 4. Milwaukee's the 4th team, and obviously Detroit's only a game back of them. Milwaukee's 7 games back of first. So, I mean, I guess you could say top 3 really isn't too attainable for the Detroit Pistons. They started off hot, started off 14-6. They beat the Celtics, but I mean, just after that, they really couldn't get it going. Like I said, when they started off 14-6, they won on that 7-game losing streak, and then finally snapped it against the Atlanta Hawks. So, I mean, good for them. But Detroit's going to be a team that you really don't want to see in the playoffs, I feel. If you're Boston or Cleveland, I'm sure both of these teams will be able to handle them and beat them in at least 7 games. But, I mean, Detroit's going to give you a tough series, especially against the Celtics, I feel, because Detroit matches up pretty well against the Celtics. Celtics have never really had a answer for Andre Drummond, and you got Avery Bradley who can lock down Kyrie Irving and play well on him. So, I think if the Celtics saw the Detroit Pistons, the Celtics would still be able to pull out the win in the series, but Detroit will give them a bunch of fits. So we'll see how it all plays out. But, I mean, good for Detroit to end their 7-game losing streak. As for this next game we got the New York Knicks headed into Brooklyn. New York won this one 111-104. Kristaps Porzingis only played 18 minutes in this one. He had 13 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, and he shot 5 of 10. And we'll talk about why he only played 18 minutes in a moment. You had Courtney Lee with 27 points in this one, Enes Kanter with 13 and 9 rebounds. As for the Nets, you had Rondae Hollis-Jefferson with 25 points, 7 rebounds. He shot 10 of 16 in that one. Spencer Dinwiddie had 26 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and DeMar Carroll had 13 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. He shot 5 of 10. But Porzingis only played 18 minutes in this one because he left the game with a non-contact knee injury. I believe it was a knee injury. That's what they said. But I saw him come out. I can't remember exactly if it was his knee or like his ankle or something like that. But yeah, it was non-contact. I saw it. No one really touched him or anything like that. So I mean, as a Knicks fan, that's a little concerning right there because obviously non-contact injuries aren't something you want to see because that's usually when the injury is worse. And like another thing about Kristaps Porzingis, he spent a lot of this season injured so far. It really hasn't been big injuries or anything like that, but it's been like injuries that have made him miss a couple of days, made him miss a week. So really, hopefully he can get this whole injury situation figured out because the Knicks are obviously a whole lot better when he's out there, and he gives them every chance in the world to win when he's out there. I mean, the guy's one of the better power forwards in the league, I guess you could say. And let's see, who else would be? I think he is the best power forward in the league right now. Would I say Draymond Green? Kristaps Porzingis is better than Draymond Green? Yeah, he's better than Draymond. I mean, Draymond Green plays better defense, but I feel like Kristaps Porzingis does everything a whole lot better. Is there anything else? I feel like power forwards are just something that's really not. It's like how centers these last few years haven't really been the big position in the NBA. I think power forward. I mean, can you consider Anthony Davis a power forward, or is that just the center? I mean, I know he's playing with DeMarcus Cousins, so I mean, one's got to play that position. I think it's Anthony Davis. So I mean, I guess I'd say Anthony Davis is better than Kristaps Porzingis. But I mean, as for a true power forward, I don't think there's anyone better than Kristaps right now. Is there? No, I think that's it. I mean, you got like guys like Paul Millsap, but Millsap's been injured this season. He's out for a few more months. So I think, yeah, I guess you consider. I mean, Porzingis the best true power forward in the league, but yeah, I just really hope he gets his injury, like I said, just gets this whole injury bug figured out because you really don't want to spend too much time on the shelf. And like I said, it's just better when he's out there for the Knicks, and he's much better. It's much better for the league when he's out there playing. As for this next game, though, we had the Lakers heading into Cleveland. Cleveland won this one 121-112. LeBron ended up dropping a triple-double in this one. He had 25 points, 12 rebounds, 12 assists, shot 8 of 18. Kevin Love had 28 points, 11 rebounds. Jose Calderon had 17 points in this one. And as for the Lakers, Larry Nance only had 6 points. Brandon Ingram had 26 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Then you had Josh Hart, who started in this one. He had 11 points, 10 rebounds. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was out of this game for personal reasons. Then you had Julius Randle with 13 points off the bench. Kyle Kuzma with 20 off the bench, 7 rebounds. And then Jordan Clarkson, not a good shooting game from him. He had 11 off the bench. But as for Lonzo Ball, he had a pretty good game yesterday. 13 points, 11 rebounds, 11 assists, 8 rebounds, Shot 5 of 11 and 3 of 8 from the three-point line. Not a great shooting game from the three-point line from him. I mean, I guess that's a little bit over 40% or around that range. But, I mean, really still don't like Lonzo. I mean, it's really up to him, obviously, because he's the player. But I really just don't like how he's taken most of his shots from the three-point line. I feel like he's better suited to drive in and finish there. I think it's more of a confidence thing as to why he doesn't. But, I mean, he's been playing a whole lot better these last couple of games than he did to start out the season. And I'm not ready to say Lonzo's a top rookie or anything like that, obviously, because he isn't. And his shooting numbers are still pretty poorly. But, I mean, they're getting better as time goes. So maybe he's starting to figure it out. And maybe it's time that we all just lay off Alonzo a little bit and just let him do his thing. But I don't know. We'll see how it is. But like I said, he played well yesterday. And then against the 76ers, he played well. He played a game a couple of days ago. I can't remember who they were playing, but he had a good game in that one too. It was it was against the Knicks. Lonzo played well against the Knicks in Madison Square Garden. So, I mean, his last couple of games against big teams on national TV, I mean, they've been good games. So, I mean, that's good for him to be pretty much boosting his stats up. Yesterday, he played 38 out of the 48 minutes you could play. So, I mean, he's starting to pretty much be out there a whole lot more. If you remember in the beginning of the season a couple of weeks ago, I mean, Lonzo really wasn't playing in the fourth quarter because he was more hurting the team than he was helping them. So he's starting to figure it out. So, I mean, if the Lakers if he ends up figuring out and gets his shooting percentage up a whole lot higher and starts scoring a lot more, I mean, Lakers might be a good team going forward, but we'll see how it all ends up. And as for the Cavs, I mean, just another day, another win. Right now, they're 21-8. They're on probably like a 4-game winning streak right now, and I think they're only 2.5 games back of Boston right now. And they're 2 games ahead of Toronto, game and a half ahead of Toronto right now. Toronto's the 3rd seed, Cleveland's the 2nd seed, but Cleveland, it's going to be between Cleveland and Boston, I feel, for that number 1 seed. Let's head off to the next game. No, we got the Sacramento Kings who headed into Minnesota. Minnesota won that one big time, 119-96. The Kings really had no chance in this one. You had Zach Randolph with 15 points and 9 rebounds. Then you had George Hill with 16 points, 3 assists. De'Aaron Fox only played 7 minutes in this one, had 2 points. Garrett Temple played 18 minutes, only 3 points. And Sky Labissiere, who started in that one, too, only had 6 points. So not a good game from any of the starting 5 from the Sacramento Kings. I mean, George Hill, I guess, and Zach Randolph, those are pretty decent games right there. But, I mean, Labissiere, Fox, and Temple really didn't do anything. As for the Timberwolves, you had Andrew Wiggins with 22 points, Karl Anthony Towns with 30 points, 14 rebounds. And Jimmy Butler with 21 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists. Jimmy Butler's starting to play a whole lot better than how he was. I mean, he hasn't been playing bad this season, but he's starting to look like the old Jimmy Butler and pretty much starting to look like the best player on that team, as he should be. I know I was watching him the other day against the Clippers, I think it was. Or was it? No, it was against the 70s. Yeah, against the 76ers on ESPN. I think it was on Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember exactly. But, I mean, Jimmy Butler hit back-to-back threes in order to take the lead. Sixers come back, score again. They have the lead, and then Jimmy Butler comes back, hits a 3 to tie it up, take them to overtime. They lost in that game, obviously, in overtime. But the Timberwolves right now, they're 17-12. They're playing good basketball right now. They just need to figure out a way to keep it consistent. And if they're able to stay consistent, I mean, this could be a dangerous team going forward. They're not really going to compete with the Warriors or anything like that. But I feel that, just like I said, if they're able to keep a consistent game going, they're going to be able to compete with teams like the Spurs, and like they can compete with the Rockets, I guess. But I mean, really don't see them doing too much against the Warriors. And as for the last game, speaking of the Warriors, we have them facing off with the Dallas Mavericks, and Golden State won that one, 112-97. Dirk Nowitzki finally had a good game. He had 18 points, 9 rebounds. Harrison Barnes had 16.7 rebounds. Yogi Ferrell, 13 points in that one. As for the Warriors, you had Jordan Bell with 8 points, 6 rebounds. Kevin Durant went off for a big game, 36 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists. Klay Thompson had a solid game too, 25 points, 5 rebounds. And Omari Caspi had 17 points, 11 rebounds. And this is good for the Warriors. I mean, when you got Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant out there still doing their thing, you really don't have to worry about Steph Curry or Draymond Green being out. And I'm sure they really don't worry too much about those guys being out in the regular season, because they know the playoffs is when they're going to be making their real money. So, I mean, going forward, it's just the Warriors got to find a way to stay healthy and pretty much rest up their guys so they can be ready for these playoffs. But we'll see how it all ends up. But yeah, like I said, finally won 100% of my picks, and that was actually the last game of the night for yesterday. So let's make our picks for today. Let me pull it up, the games right here. Let's see. First up, I think we got a bunch of games going on tonight. So yeah, first up, we got the Jazz heading into Boston. If Gordon Hayward was playing, like if he didn't break his ankle, then Gordon Hayward will be having his first game against his former team, but I think he's going to be on the sideline, on the bench with the team, pretty much watching it still. So I got the Celtics beating the Jazz in this one. I just think the Celtics are, even without Gordon Hayward, obviously are way better than the Jazz, and I don't think the Jazz are going to be able to keep up with Boston. Next up, you got the Miami Heat facing off with the Hornets. The Heat just came off of a big loss to or not a big loss, they lost by 7, but to the Trailblazers. I think the Hornets recently just lost to the, who was it? The Hornets just played, I think it was let me double check it right here, who the Hornets are coming off. All right, so yeah, they just lost to the Rockets. I knew it was a big team. I thought it was the Warriors, but I know that was a couple weeks ago. But yeah, they're just coming off a loss to the Rockets, so both teams coming off losses. I'm going to go with the Heat in this one. I think they're going to be able to pull it out and come out with the win. Then you got the Detroit Pistons facing off with Indiana. Detroit's coming off of a win. Indiana is just coming off of a loss against OKC. I think Indiana's going to come out and pull this one away with a win. Detroit, really, they're still not convincing me. And they did beat the Hawks yesterday, but the Hawks are a bad team. But I think Victor Oladipo and co are going to come out and pretty much have a little redemption game since they didn't play well against the Thunder. Then you got the Trailblazers facing off with the Magic. I got the Trailblazers in this one. I think they're going to be able to put up back-to-back wins. We'll see. I mean, I know the Trailblazers are one of the more inconsistent teams in the league, but I think they'll be able to do it. You really just need Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum to put up big games together. As for the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're facing off with the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm going to go with the 76ers in this one. The 76ers are a better team and play better team defense and also share the ball, so that's really all it takes to beat the Thunder. And like I said, the Thunder really don't share the ball at all, so I got Philly in this one. As for the Clippers, they're heading into Washington. I got Washington in this one now that John Wall's back. I think the Wizards are going to go on a nice little win streak with John Wall coming back, and I think they're going to shoot themselves back up into the top 4 eventually. Then you got the Brooklyn Nets facing off with the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors are going to win this one big time. Nets coming off of a tough loss to the Knicks. They lost by 4 in that one, 115-111, as I talked about earlier. But I think the Raptors are just going to be too much for the Nets in this game, so I got the Raptors winning that one. Then we got the Atlanta Hawks facing off with the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm going to go with the Grizzlies in this one. Right now, the Hawks just simply aren't playing good basketball, and the Grizzlies really haven't been too good so far this season. But I think the Grizzlies got a whole lot more talent than the Hawks do. Then you got the Chicago Bulls facing off with the Bucks. I think the Bucks are going to come out and pull out the win in this one. The Bulls are coming off of a win against Utah, I think it is. And I just think Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton and Bledsoe are going to be too much for that Bulls team. Then we got the Pelicans facing off with the Nuggets. No Nikola Jokic in this one, so I feel Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins are going to play really well. Probably both going to go for at least 10 rebounds and at least 25 points. So I got the Pelicans winning big in this one. And then you got the Spurs facing off with the Rockets on ESPN. And this is going to be a tough game right here. I'm not sure if Kawhi Leonard's going to be playing more minutes. I know he's on a minutes restriction, so I think I'm going to go with either way, I think I'm going to go with the Spurs in this one. I think they're going to be able to pull it out, and that Spurs defense is going to be able to lock down that Rockets offense. And maybe we'll see Kawhi Leonard play a whole lot more minutes since he's been out since he played on a minutes restriction last game. So we'll see how it all ends up, but once again, I got the Jazz beating the Celtics. I got the Heat beating the Hornets. I got the Pacers beating the Pistons. The Trailblazers beating the Magic. The 76ers beating the Thunder. The Wizards beating the Clippers. The Raptors beating the Nets. The Grizzlies beating the Hawks. The Bucks beating the Bulls. Pelicans beating the Nuggets. And the Spurs beating the Rockets. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Next up, we're going to talk some Sunday Night Football and talk a little bit about the Monday Night Football game also. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
The NBA games from Thursday night. Talked about the scores from there. The Cavs beat the Lakers. Lonzo Ball almost had a triple-double in that one. The Knicks beat the Nets. Kristaps Porzingis left that one with a non-contact knee injury. The Pistons finally broke their 7-game losing streak. The Timberwolves beat up on the Kings, and the Warriors came out with the win against the Mavericks with Draymond Green not playing in that one. And I made my picks for yesterday for tonight's games. I'll just go over those real quick just to recap. I have the Celtics beating the Jazz, the Heat beating the Hornets, the Pacers beating the Pistons, the Trailblazers beating the Magic, the 76ers beating the Thunder, the Wizards beating the Clippers, the Raptors beating the Nets, the Grizzlies beating the Hawks, the Bucks beating the Bulls, the Pelicans beating the Nuggets, and the Spurs beating the Rockets. So for this segment, though, we're going to be talking about the Sunday Night Football game between the Dallas Cowboys and Oakland Raiders, and we'll talk a little about that Monday Night Football game between the Falcons and Bucks. So let's just get it started with the Sunday night game. You got Dallas heading into Oakland. Oakland's coming off a loss to Kansas City. It was 26-15, I believe the score was last week against the Chiefs. Oakland in that one really just came out and just didn't play well at all. I mean, it was ugly how they played. I really don't understand why Oakland has been so bad so far this season. Amari Cooper's having a real down year right now. Michael Crabtree started off the season hot. But these last few weeks, I mean, he's really just toned it down big time. It really hasn't been that big-time receiver that they've had so far this season. And Derek Carr hasn't really played well since he came back from his back injury. Again, he fractured his back early on in the season, and the Raiders brought him back after missing only 1 week. And I feel like that just probably has to do with how poorly he's been playing this season. I mean, I know he's not going to say it, and the coaches won't say it, but I'm sure he's got to be playing hurt right now. So, I mean, it just really hasn't been a good year for the Raiders. That defense has been just as bad as it was last year, if not worse. I mean, they really can't stop anyone, and like I said, the season so far has just been a big disappointment. As for the Cowboys, they're coming off of a 30-10 win against the Giants last week. Dak Prescott threw for 334 yards, also 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. Rod Smith had about 160 plus total yards, had 2 touchdowns also, so he's been playing really well. And I think, and also this is going to be the last game of Ezekiel Elliott's suspension, so he's going to be coming back next week against Seattle. So I think Dallas in this one, I mean, they're favored in this one as they should be. I think they're the better team right now, and they're playing the better football. And I also think they're going to be able to come out with the win. I don't think the Raiders' defense is going to be able to hold Dallas's offense, even with Ezekiel Elliott not even back there. Rod Smith is going to have a big game. If you have him, start him on your fantasy teams. I would if I had him. I think Dak Prescott's going to play well in this one too, and Dez Bryant should have a big game here because Oakland secondary has been pretty brutal so far this season. And Oakland, they got a good offense, or I mean, that's at least what we were told in the beginning of the season. But I mean, when your defense is out there not really giving you a chance to pretty much build up a lead or anything like that, then you really have no chance to win a game, obviously. So the Raiders, I mean, once the offseason comes, I mean, if they lose this one, they're pretty much out of the playoff picture. I think it's gonna take 7 wins to get into the wild card in the AFC. So yeah, just like I said, if the Raiders lose this one, they're pretty much done. And in this draft, they're going to need to focus on defense. I know last year they drafted a cornerback or safety. I think it was with their first pick, but they're just pretty much going to have to spend this entire draft on defense. I feel like don't even think about going for an offensive player. Maybe pick up a running back, but I doubt they will since they got Marshawn for another year. But I mean, just like I said, the Raiders need to just spend this entire draft on defense and pretty much look for guys that are going to be able to contribute right away, because these guys that they got out there right now just simply can't cover. I think that's one of their biggest problems. They can't cover to save their lives, and they really haven't been getting enough pressure to the quarterback. So I mean, they just really got to fix this defense, and without a good defense, I mean, that whole going to the AFC Championship, winning the Super Bowl before they leave Oakland dream isn't going to happen, because I mean, defense wins championships. That's been proven, and we see it time after time. So they really need to build that up. You're not going to win games with a top offense, and I've been seeing too that Jack Del Rio's job might be on the line, not in this game, but I mean just for the season. I've been seeing talk about how he might be gone after the season, but I think it might be the offensive coordinator who's going to leave first, and Jack Del Rio might get another year. So, I mean, just a year that everyone thought Oakland was going to go to the AFC Championship, challenge the Raiders, and possibly go to the Super Bowl before they leave to Vegas. I mean, it just simply hasn't worked out that way, and they'd be lucky to finish 8-8 probably, because they got the Eagles next week, and then they got the Chargers in Week 17, and the Chargers are playing good football, and we'll see how the Eagles do with Nick Foles this week. So we'll see how it all goes for them. But as for Dallas, if they pull out the win here, that's an 8-6 team, and then you got Ezekiel Elliott for your last 2 games. And like I've been saying in the NFC, it's going to take at least 10 wins to get into the playoffs. And if the Cowboys finish 10-6, obviously they're going to need the Packers to finish 9-7. I think the Falcons right now, they're 8-5. I think they'll be finishing 9-7 also. And Detroit, I think they have a good chance at finishing 9-7 too. The Rams right now, they're playing the Seahawks this week. The Rams are currently 9-4, so I mean the Cowboys would need the Rams to lose at least 3 games, or the Cowboys actually need the Rams to win this week. If Seattle loses, then that'll put Seattle at 6 losses, and then they got the Seattle's got Dallas next week, so that'd be the head-to-head win for Dallas right there if they were to pull it off. So I mean, if the Rams win this week, and then the Packers lose 1 more game, the Falcons lose 2 games, I expect them to, and the Detroit loses 1 more game, which they could against the Packers. I mean, Dallas has a good shot at making the playoffs. They just got to win out and pretty much hope it all works out in their favor. So we'll see if it does. But just like I said in this game, like I said, Dak Prescott's going to have a big game, and Rod Smith's going to go for a big game too. Alfred Morris might go for about 70 yards, but I really think we're going to get a big dose of Rod Smith in this game. And like I said, Dez Bryant should go for around 5 catches, maybe 100 yards and a touchdown in this one. So yeah, I got Dallas big time in this one. But as for that Monday night game, it's going to be the Atlanta Falcons heading into Tampa Bay, facing off with the Bucs. So far this season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have pretty much been the disappointment in the NFC, as the Raiders have been the disappointment in the AFC. Many thought that the Bucs were going to make the playoffs this year and be a good team, but so far it just hasn't worked out that way. I'm not sure if it has to do with the hurricane that hit Florida and them having their bye week in week 1 rather than week 13. I think it was supposed to be. So they're going to finish playing 16 straight games once the season's over. And who knows, that might have had an effect on this team. But either way, I mean, Jameis Winston, everyone was thinking that he was going to come out and take this next step from being a good quarterback to becoming a great quarterback, and he simply just hasn't taken that step. Jameis Winston really gets in his way way too often, and he really just turns the ball over way too much. And I'm not sure if the Bucs are going to keep their coach after this year because, like I said, this year's just been a straight disappointment for them. Everyone was expecting them to do a whole lot more than what they did do, and it's just, like I said, it just hasn't worked out. Doug Martin really hasn't been that good of a running back since he came off of suspension. Peyton Barber's been playing well. Him and Doug Martin have been splitting the carries a whole lot more, but, I mean, I think once the offseason comes, Tampa Bay should look for a running back. Mike Evans has been a disappointment so far this season. Deshaun Jackson also, and in that defense too. Many thought it'd be a good defense at the beginning of the season, but so far it's been one of the worst defenses in the league. So, I mean, Tampa Bay just really needs to figure it out. Obviously, they have nothing to play for in the season other than pride. So, I mean, once this offseason comes, we're going to pretty much see what they're willing to do for the running back position, and then pretty much like the Raiders just got to build up on defense in the draft. I mean, Brett Grimes might retire, so they're going to need a new corner. I mean, even if he didn't retire, they need a new corner. The guy's really hasn't played well since like his first year in Miami. But as for the Falcons in this one, I think they're going to be able to pull out this win, but I think they're going to end up losing the last 2 games of the season when they play Carolina and New Orleans. But in this game, I mean, you really just want to see Julio Jones come out and have a big game. Matt Ryan needs to come out and have a good game. Devontae Freeman played well last week against the Saints. He had 91 rushing yards, I believe it was, for a touchdown. So, I mean, this is one of those games right here where the Falcons offense so far this season really hasn't played all too well. They've been really underwhelming and haven't utilized the talent on that offense. I mean, Julio Jones has had a real down year so far this season. Devontae Freeman finally got the ball more than 10 times last week. He got the ball 24 times, which is why he got his 91 yards. But, I mean, the Falcons really have just been a disappointment so far this season, so they're really going to need to come out with the win right here and build up some momentum. And like I said, I mean, even if they do pull out the win, I do expect them to lose to the Saints the week after and then the Panthers and miss out on the playoffs. I just don't believe in the Falcons right now and don't think that they have talent, but they're just not a good team right now. That defense has been playing well. You got Desmond Trufant playing corner right there, shutting down other people. But just like I said, that offense is just like Tevin Coleman. I mean, he's a whole lot better than what his stats show. But I mean, the offensive coordinator just doesn't like to utilize him on that offense. And Julio Jones, like I said, I mean, just really hasn't been himself. Mohamed Sanu's been producing more than he has, really. I mean, I know Mohamed Sanu probably doesn't have the same kind of numbers that Julio does, but you're seeing Sanu produce a consistent wide receiver number 2 performance week in and week out, and Julio Jones just hasn't been that consistent number 1 receiver that the Falcons needed so far this season. And Matt Ryan just really hasn't looked like the MVP he was last year, so he's really going to need to figure it out. But I'm thinking this game, though, I think it's just going to come down to Tampa Bay's defense is not playing well at all, and it's going to come down to the Falcons' offense being able to do enough. So I think I definitely got the Falcons in this one. And like I said, I mean, I'm not sure what the Falcons are going to do with their offensive coordinator this offseason or even their coach. I mean, if they miss the playoffs, that's kind of unacceptable just given the team that you have. But we're going to see what they end up doing. But like I said, I got the Falcons, and that's actually going to wrap it up for this show. First off, we talked about, what did we talk about? We talked about the Thursday Night Football game. Brock Osweiler came out from the bench, threw 2 touchdowns. I made my Week 15 picks, excuse me. Talked about the NBA games from last night, made my picks for tonight. And then for this segment, we talked about the Sunday night and Monday night football games. So like I said, that's going to wrap it up for today's show. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Tapia. We'll be back on Tuesdays, so stay tuned, and we'll talk to you later.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.